all to this online lecture series. And this is the third lecture in this lecture series with NMRC and UNESCO for the UNESCO's State of Education report. And now I request Professor Minati Panda ma'am to give a brief about NMRC lecture series, UNESCO NMRC UNESCO lecture series and SOER. Ma'am.
Yeah, thank you, Rahul. Um, Good evening, everybody. Uh, this is our fourth lecture in this series. Of course, more than four speakers have spoken because some of the lectures had more than one speaker. Uh, this is actually part of a lecture series that NMRC is organizing in collaboration with UNESCO for 2025 UNESCO State of the Education Report for India. The title of this year's report is Multilingualism and Mother Tongue Education. And that's the reason NMRC is on board. Rahul is helping us in doing this report. UNESCO actually started this report series in 2019 and has already done 6 reports, one every year till 2024. The first report was on the right to education for children with disabilities, and all these are India report, not international. They focus entirely on India. The second one was technical and vocational education and training. The third was teachers and professional development. The fourth was artificial intelligence and education, where artificial intelligence was discussed with all its scope and possibilities. The fifth one was education to address climate change. And the sixth one was done last year, culture and arts in education. I think it's needless to talk about the importance of language to this group. I think this group, as I see, is already very familiar with the question of language in school and higher education. Um, it's one artifact, cultural artifact, which is also inside us. It's part of our brain. It's mediated our brain. And it also has developed to a level that it is today because of cultural intervention. And being a psychologist and many of you are linguists, we all know that if mind is fundamentally mediated and in a post-linguistic phase of children, that's a 2 or 3 years, our mind is almost, if not entirely, to a very large extent, mediated by language. So we reduce children to empty slates by not speaking in a language that they understand. And unfortunately, the reality of school education in India is that for many children, we have, I mean, the records so different numbers, like we have at least comfortably speaking more than 1,300 languages, but census, returns around 1,950 languages to us. I mean, different language names to us. And with rationalization, of course, it records 1,300 plus languages. People's Linguistic Survey talks about 1,700 plus languages. And all these are languages, not dialects, and these languages are spoken by communities. But then if you look at the language policy, and specifically language in education policy in India, less than 50 languages are used in education, in educational institutions. Mostly 22 scheduled languages are used. and some of them like Sanskrit and Sindhi are not used as medium of instructions also. It's not that all 22 languages are used as medium of instructions, but which basically means that hundreds of languages, or rather most of the languages, are not used as medium of instructions in classrooms, or at least as languages to communicate some of our classroom transactions, if not as medium of instructions, but as at least complementary languages in the classrooms. As a result, huge percentage of children suffer in learning. And that loss many describe as a very major epistemic eraser. Children's languages, their knowledge systems, their affective registers don't find space in the most politically and intellectually, so also socially, inclusive space called school and higher education or university. And so this year's report, therefore, we're planning to do on multilingualism and mother tongue education. Why we use mother tongue education? I mean, multilingual education would have been enough, but we are um, also using the term mother tongue alongside. Um, this is a very debatable area. I'll not get into it, but one thing I can say that the term mother tongue is used in Constitution, and since we're talking about languages which are which are spoken in less than 10,000 speakers, which are not considered even as languages by many, we thought the use of mother tongue at least makes every child's language um, uh, uh, worthy of inclusion, or at least finds a representation in our structure of education. And well, people also talk about home language in place of mother tongue. We're not getting into that debate because yes, home language, use of home language does, represent languages of communities of people and has a very different social and academic significance in our field. But use of mother tongue protects the languages of minority and more specifically minoritized communities or linguistic communities more than the home language doing. And we thought that yes, for from a right perspective, we should we can continue with the term mother tongue, and also by including mother tongue, we empower those communities. There are other reasons we'll discuss in some other forums, because today, we decided to dialogue the role of AI in implementing multilingual education. Well, all of you know that when we talk about AI, we talk about another very powerful artifact which has a huge mediational role to play in teaching learning of students or teaching learning fields. Language, of course, is one of the major component in that, and today we'll be talking about that aspect of AI. We'll have another round table on AI, which will be coordinated by British Council, which will probably talk about, we'll go a little beyond language, but today we'll focus more on language technologies, because all three speakers do work on language technology and try to create an interface with education. And that's what we are going to discuss. So the primary focus will be on language technology and the way it is helping us preserve the languages which would otherwise perish, and or the languages which are not documented. They may continue in oral traditions in our everyday space, but they are not canonized or coded, and therefore are not officially accessible, not officially, are not accessible through written medium to us. but we'll also discuss, if whatever and if possible, the interface that we can create between education and AI, with a focus on language technology. Over to Karthik. Karthik will moderate this session. And so all three of them are speakers, Karthik, Kalika, and Ritesh. Karthik, would you also introduce our speakers and then start the
Yes.
session?
Yeah, I will do
Thank you.
the.
Over to you.
I'll also introduce. So thank you, Professor Minati, and thank you to the UNESCO and the JNU team, Rahul and Varsha as well. So before I start introducing the speakers today, I want to set the stage by setting up a few central problems that each of us would address at some level. So we all are aware today that the national education policy wants the medium of instruction at least until grade 5, but preferably grade 8 and beyond should be in the mother tongue or the home language of the child. Now, to do that is a very big challenge. The challenge here is both in terms of material production and in teacher training as well. No, it's not just material production; it's also teacher training. So we also recognize those, and also getting some of these languages, as Professor Minati just pointed out, many of them are non-canonized languages or non-standardized languages. So how do we include those into the education picture? So these are all some of the larger challenges that we have today. And if we are considering AI, if we are to consider AI, because AI today is often shown to us or often given to us as a sort of a magical pill by certain sections of the society. So if we are to advance AI in mother tongue based education, we want to understand what are the possibilities, potentials, and also pitfalls for this sort of a supposed magical pill. Is it even a magical pill? Is something that we need to take into question. So that's the first question that we are addressing. So that's the only question that we are addressing. We are sort of beginning to have this conversation. So there's a conversation starter rather than a sort of a settling debate. So we are not settling debates here. We are starting a conversation here. So we are addressing this conversation from four perspectives. One is availability. So the question here of availability is, do we have technology available that will support both written and unwritten languages of India? That's the first question. And how these models are they compared to, let's say, dominant and scheduled languages? So that's the first question, and the question needs to be addressed for us, to all of us, is to, in the classroom settings as diverse as India, how much will that be? Secondly, is accessible. Even when a model exists, how accessible is it? Can they handle low resource environment? So what are the technical barriers? What are the potential non-technical barriers that exist in accessing these technologies? Can it work in a remote village? I just visited day before yesterday in Nilambur. Can it work in those remote contexts? That's the first question that we have. So accessibility needs to be again framed from technical, financial, and infrastructural uh, perspectives, not just about democratizing AI. And are these adaptable? Can AI models, particularly speech or language models, can they be trained on a very small data set? Most of the India's spoken languages are undocumented yet, and all of them are, in fact, all of Indian languages are lesser resource languages. So can they be easily adaptable for dialects across India? So can a Gondi language spoken in Bhopal and Ahmedabad, can it both be understood? Or can a Konkani spoken in both Kerala and Goa, can it be understood? So that's the other question. And ethics and accountability. So widespread adoption of AI in education service raise very important questions, given that these are all statistical machines. They are not necessarily stable machines. They don't reproduce the same answers every time. How ethical and accountable are these? Data ownership, consent, equity, and can AIs also flatten our linguistic diversity? So what are the ethical and accountability challenges? So these are the four major perspectives from which that I think all the three of us would be speaking. Uh, it's also a great honor to introduce all the three panel members. Professor Minati is also one of the panel members. She'll be poking holes in our talks from the pedagogy perspective. So that I think this crowd doesn't need an introduction to Professor Minati Panda, but nevertheless, our recent work on multilingual intelligence has a tremendous intervention with AI. So we have to see how that is going to go forward. And Dr. Kalika Bali is a senior principal researcher at Microsoft Research India. She's an internationally well-known expert in natural language processing and speech technologies. She works to make AI inclusive and equitable. Her research focuses on developing linguistically and culturally grounded AI systems, particularly for low resource and underrepresented language. A core member of the project VELM, Universal Empowerment of Large Language Models, she explores inclusive applications of LLMs across global linguistic contexts. Dr. Kalika is also known for her foundational work on bias mitigation within AI, especially how LLMs produce bias. So our work in that sense is a bridge between the computational model building and its application in the linguistically and culturally diverse space like India. Dr. Ritesh is a linguist and a uh, computational social scientist, if I may. He is one of the CEOs of Unreal Tech. He leads his work is at the intersection of language documentation, speech technology, and also digital safety. His work engages directly with India's multilingual and often marginalized linguistic communities. He has developed ASR models and speech data sets for endangered and Tibeto-Burman languages, while also simultaneously advancing AI tools for detection of aggression and hate speech and misogyny online. So his projects like COM-MA, again, Harmport, have produced open access dataset supporting both social media platforms to regulate hate speech and misogyny online, especially in Indian languages, and also for academic research. And finally, myself, so I'll also introduce myself. So my name is Karthik Narayanan. I'm a linguist and a digital archive. I work at the intersection of social linguistics, language documentation, and digital humanities. Uh, I'm a director and co-founder of the Council for Diversity and Innovation, and also a chief community and data officer at Unreal Tech. So Ritesh is my colleague. So my work focuses on community-led tech-enabled language documentation, especially in low resource context. So I predominantly work with the communities of the Nilgiris, those that are very small, like the Toda Kota, whose population is not more than 3,000 speakers. And I also advise national and state governments on language archiving initiatives in India. So that's the panel. That's an introduction to the panel. So with this, I now invite first Dr. Kalika to open this discussion by talking about her work in MSR and also in general about MSR's work, because we see a lot of interesting research coming out from MSR. The most interesting one is the bias mitigation, especially on the gender and how LLMs understand gender. So we want you to comment on those and how are you expanding the coverage of languages within MSR and within this AI models? So that if you could start off with, I'll be very happy. And one more thing that I wanted to ask you. So one thing that have caught my attention over the past, especially a year or two back, is your work with the Hindi Gondi translation system, where you have produced a model that could translate storybooks, especially children's story material for a massive translation system. So if you could shed some light on those and the technology behind it, we'll be very happy.
Yeah, thank you, Karthik, and thank you, Ritesh, for contacting me for this roundtable. It's very close to my heart. Um, so let me first address the elephant in the room. Are the generative AI models right now capable of dealing with all the languages, even all the so-called mainstream and official languages of our country? And the answer is not really, not to the same level as we see them working on or for English. So this whole, our my work and my team's work in Microsoft Research is focused on multilingual and multicultural generative AI. And we have been looking into this for ever since the whole generative AI kind of, the chat GPT boomed. And there are a couple of reasons why, the whole multilingual generative AI is not as exciting right now as, people who've used it in English, they get very excited about how ChatGPT works and how Gemini works, etc., etc. It isn't as exciting if you are not a speaker of, say, English. And the reason primarily is data, because these models are trained on humongous amounts of data. And when we talk about Indian languages, especially, relatively low resource languages, as we call them, because they have less amounts of digital resources available in those languages, or some of them, might not have any, is that there is no data. So what are we going to train the models on? How is the model going to see anything about these languages? Now, and that affects everything, but it affects bias a lot. Because the way bias is addressed typically in this whole generative AI framework is by, giving it some kind of adversarial example, saying that this is how, you know, gender bias looks like in this language. This is how gender bias looks like in this language. And I never get tired of saying this, and I'll say it again, that bias does not translate very well. And so we had a Gates Foundation funded project to look at, to create, data sets addressing gender bias in 5 of India's languages. And what we found was, what we were trying to do is that there are these benchmarks and there are these data sets that are used for detecting and bias in English. So we thought we will take those data sets and we will translate them. And of course, the translations won't be perfect, but we'll ask people to look at those translations and, um, correct the grammatical inconsistencies, etc. there. And what we found was that the translations were so bad that they absolutely made no sense. Something that is biased in one language, if you just translate it as it is into another language, it makes absolutely no sense. So how did we then, what did we do about that? What we went about doing was that we actually went on the ground. We held workshops in various places, and kind of had women participants come up, attend those workshops. And the reason we had those workshops is that the notion of bias also varies so much, right? Like if I say women are not capable of doing math, which is a very common statement that many people across the world make. I am absolutely certain that everyone in this forum will say that's not true. That's a biased sentence, right? But we have to just walk out of our, living rooms. We don't even have to go out of our cities. We just have to walk out till the road and, ask people whether this is biased or not. And some people, even women, might agree with it. Women's primary job is to look after home and family. Like, that's something that many people will not consider as a bias statement. So when we had these workshops, we kind of discussed what gender bias could be, and what does it look like. And the women who participated in it, after being exposed to the notion of what gender bias is, we asked them to create templatic you know uh, sentences like, girls cannot do this because, or girls should do this because, etc., etc. Like those kind of templatic sentences, which showed bias, right? So I still remember, this is again one of my favorite examples, that one of the girls actually said, and I will say this in Hindi and then, give the translation in English for those who don't understand Hindi. लड़कियों को दांत दिखाकर नहीं हंसना चाहिए. Girls should not laugh with their teeth showing. Now, in English, it makes zero sense. Like, I've related this to many of my colleagues who are monolingual English speakers, and they have no idea what I'm talking about. But a Hindi speaker understands immediately. It's such an idiomatic use. Like, why should girls not show their teeth? It's because, what does it even mean that girls should not show their teeth? It means that they shouldn't laugh with abandon, right? And why shouldn't they laugh with abandon? Because there's a value judgment passed on them when they laugh in abandon, right? If you laugh with abandon, then you're a certain kind of a woman, a certain kind of girl, right? And that's why bias is so intricately related to the language and the culture of that language community, that it is very difficult to say that we can do bias detection and bias mitigation by not looking specifically at the language, not looking to create in the present context of generative AI, not looking how to create these kind of examples and data sets for the system to learn from. And you know just by translating, we'll never find this girls should not laugh with their teeth showing example in any English data set, right? So that was like a big learning. I mean, not that we didn't know, but we had empirical proof now that you can't translate biased sentences from one language. And I think that is true across the board. Translation works to a certain extent, and even I've worked on translation a lot till even more recently. Even till last year, one of my interns worked on some translation modules. But the thing that we have to understand is that machine translation, however good it is, cannot do contextual translation, right? And as the generative AI systems are getting better and they can reason, you can prompt them to bring out more context, but they need to know the context. And where would they know the context from? Is either you give it instructions, when you are eliciting these um, sentences, or they have to have seen the data before. So somehow they have to be shown the data. And another example in the education context that, I just in the morning spoke about it in one of the UNICEF things that was happening. And another example is like, a math problem like John and Mary have to divide a key lime pie, right? Into 6 parts, for example. Now that whole math problem is anchored on the fact that the key lime pie is a round thing. So it's a fraction problem. The only way you can solve that problem, or that problem even makes sense, is if you know that that key lime pie is round, right? And no translation system in this world will convert that to dosa, or to paratha, or to roti, or to puran poli, or whatever. Like, it won't translate. At the best it will do is that it will transliterate it as key lime pie. Now, I mean, I don't even have to make this point to all of you here that how many people in this country know what a key lime pie is? Forget key lime pie. How many people even know what a pie is? Right? So these are very, very real problems, and the way we are going about addressing this, and because these models are humongous and extremely expensive to train and require a lot of data, the things that we have been going ahead and looking at is how do we train smaller models. So what the SLMs, or the small language models, are distilled models of the bigger ones with less capacity, but you can then use lesser amount of data to kind of train them for very specific things. So we have recently done some experiments with, training small language models across multiple Indian languages. And we did this also by like synthetically creating data through language models. You show them a little bit of data, then you ask them to based on that, you ask it to create. And we released this data in the open. It's a huge amount of data. So those are still experimental. So, we are working on a specific Uriya SLM and a specific Bhojpuri SLM for agricultural domain. So like that, you have, you can be much more successful, because if you just use this tiny amount of data that we have, for fine-tuning the bigger models, the results can be very erratic. And I'm happy to talk about anything else, but I'll stop here and listen to others. So thank you.
So if it's okay, we will have one round of opening statements, then we can have the questions, if the audience is okay with that. I would, as Varsha has already suggested, I'd also ask you to note down those questions. I've also noted some for Kalika. So we will take this up in the next round. So now I invite Ritesh to talk about how at Unreal Tech they are addressing one of the primary challenges of language models, that is to expand its accessibility and adaptability of these language models, speech technologies to most Indian languages, and especially to languages that have a very small population, those that are considered less than 10,000. So how do you address those and also expand them to the domain of education? So Ritesh, open to you.
Yeah, thank you, Karthik. I'm afraid I may not have a lot to add after what Kalika has spoken. So, but see, what we are trying to do at Realtek, I'll talk about one of the projects called Project Boli. So, where we're trying to create the speech data sets for languages which are spoken by less than 10,000 speakers, but maybe spoken by more than 10,000 speakers as well. So these are the languages that are sometimes called tail languages. They're also called left out languages. So they're languages for which you don't have any data on the web available till now, which implies that it has not been used at all in training any of the large language models or essays, voice variants. And the idea is to precisely have those small language models for different kinds of tasks. So the primary task that we are looking at is transcription. So ASR task for now. So one of the things that we really look to do through the project is to be able to have uh, a voice interface for different kinds of models that you I mean so in the sense that the one of the goals that we are looking for is to have them incorporated in the education in some kind of tutoring system probably, or uh, if not tutoring system, I mean that's still a long way off, but even for providing simple access uh, to the existing models in a language that children could speak in, right? So they don't have to, for example, in order to chat with systems. So uh, the models that are there, so they don't have to currently they have to know English, for example, in order for the model to respond properly or respond in a way that makes sense to them. Uh, but the idea is to remove or to somehow handle that challenge, uh, where one could speak to the model, not type necessarily, and also speak in a language that uh, doesn't have to be one of the major languages. So I think that's one of the major things that we are doing at this point. If there are questions, I mean, I could answer about that. But I'll just keep it short. So I think Karthik was hinting at that to keep it short. So, do you want me to add anything else, Karthik? And could you follow up questions on this?
Sorry, I didn't realize I was on mute. Ah, So thank you, Ritesh, and thank you, Kalika. So both of us spoke about two different set of technologies here. One is a speech technology, the other is a translation technology. And Kalika also spoke about how bias is something that is very inherently present in most of the, basically it's the what is present in a language is also present in the language models too. Now, so let me pose it this way for the bias question, both Kalika and Ritesh can address. Now, school textbooks, especially for young children, are one of the important textbooks that formulate their uh, reasoning capacities. Those are very important in forming their ideas and ideologies in the future. Now, if we are to bring in technology to translate books, okay, in one sense, that there is also it's also an urgent problem that we have already lost so many generations because we have not been able to deliver instructions in their mother tongue. We're not been able to expand mother tongue education. Now, in a situation like this, while we see there is a potential, what pitfalls are there for a translation system? especially for producing textbooks for much more younger classes, where things like bias, if left unchecked, could have a serious consequence down the line. And some of these are not very easy to identify, as you just pointed out. So both of you can. Kalika.
Yes, so I think human oversight is very important. We cannot forget that all technology is for the benefit of humans, right? So and humans have to be involved in the production of anything via any technology. So I think right now it is human oversight. What we have noticed is that for for the say textbooks and content for younger children, um, bias, if it's not present in the original text, which I am hoping like somebody has made sure that the original text is not biased, then translating it usually, because these are like simpler concepts, does not introduce bias, but what it can introduce, bias in the sense of like gender bias or racial bias, etc. But what it can definitely introduces cultural um, um, loss, right, in the translation thing. So like the key line pie that I gave an example of. So the way, of course, like the ideal thing would be that all these generative AI models did what they were supposed to do, and they knew about the culture of all the different language communities that we are talking about here, but they don't. So the way we have been exploring, and this is not a solved problem, so I will not say that this is all done, right, is how we instruct. So if we kind of instruct the translation in such a way that, okay, translate this text about I don't know, the food of a certain child, like a story about a child having some food, translate it into from language X to language Y, keeping in mind what the food habits of the community that speaks language Y is, or like this is going to be, say, in Rajasthan, so make sure there are cultural artifacts or cultural events that are from that region and not from, I don't know, from Tamil Nadu, right? So now the problem with this, I'll tell you what happens is right now is there's a lot of stereotyping, right? Within the model itself. So if I say, this is another example that I have, like if you look at like one of these things that generate images like DALI and all image generation modules, what happens is that they will, if I say, give me an image of an Indian goddess, right? Whatever they have or do not have, they will have goddesses with multiple hands, right? So it's almost like, even if they know about the culture of the place, it's almost like an outsider's view in, right? So for say somebody not from the Indian culture, the first thing they think is unique about gods and goddesses in India is that they have multiple hands. Now, most people from this country, if they picture a god or a goddess, multiple hands is not the thing that they visualize first. So it's an outsider's gaze, even if they have some kind of information about it. Similarly, for example, even if they know, say, if we are like talking about representation in the Hindi belt, right? And we did this study quite extensively a couple of years back, not a couple of years, a year back, is that the caste representation, for example, right? If you look at the caste representation in a particular state, let's just take a state, you will find that the upper castes actually in terms of numbers are very minuscule, right? But the content that is available or the information that is available for the model to learn about that particular region they have a lot of content from that minuscule but socio-politically, socio-culturally dominant class. So it just keeps guessing or like, modifying whatever is there, hallucinating it for the rest of the communities there. So there is misrepresentation that can occur. So that is very, anyone who's done translation knows that these are very big problems, like, human well, we say human translators, we shouldn't say human translators. Real translators also have difficulty in doing that, right? So machine translations are way off. But for so for example, the Gondi you mentioned, right? The Gondi translation systems and all, when used for K1 to 4 kind of grades, for translating books from Hindi to Gondi, were pretty effective, right? Because these are simpler sentences. They do not have um, so much biased information. They work at a cultural level which is kind of known across these communities. So if they are talking about a girl going to attend a wedding with her grandmother, that's not diverging from a known cultural norm in one community to another community. Um, so those kind of things work. So right now, my only thing is while we don't have data to teach these models, which is like the best case solution, the other thing is to always have a human in the loop. There has to be human oversight on this. You can't just leave it to an automatic thing. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Kanika. That's a very insightful information, especially on the aspect that you brought in, that there is also a multi-model use that there can be, and then there are biases even in those representation. That's a very unique context, because we do see people on the fly generating images from a lot of these tools today and use it in textbooks or use it in their own works everywhere. Now, Ritesh, over to you. So again, another bias-related question, but from a very different perspective. So I do speak Hindi, but the Hindi that I speak is not the same. Okay, people might laugh at it, but I communicate my intention. But when I speak the same Hindi to an ASR system, they don't understand me. Now, that I think is a problem not just for me, but also for a huge uh, so-called Hindi speakers from across India. And now this is not only Hindi's problem. I think in Tamil also, certain Tamils are well understood than the others. And that's true for every varieties within this non-language, non-standard varieties. It's true for all non-standard varieties. Now, a real life application in classrooms where you are teaching languages and also other subjects is, if a speech recognition system is to be used alongside with the teacher, how far will it be effective in understanding a large section whose mother tongue might not be the one that they're speaking, and also of that of a child's language? So there are two problems here. Do our systems understand a child's language? And secondly, do our systems understand the varieties and dialects and all my mother tongue influences in my speech? How does the system work? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so well, those are the two kinds of data sets that have been rarely used for training systems, right? So when we try and build data sets, there are very standing set of guidelines, instructions that we collect from native speakers and adult native speakers. And the kind of instructions that you probably got in 80s for fieldwork. So adult with all the teeth intact and whatnot. So those kind of instructions exist still in
Yeah.
when you're building data sets for, I think in general, for a speech system, it exists uh, at a higher level. So, and we did run some of those experiments, the kind of things that you're talking about. And we tried to look at how will the ASR systems work for non-native speakers. And these were the Hindi systems, and uh, the state of the art, the best systems that we have today. It works pretty well for native speech, especially when the speech is kind of, I would say, rehearsed, not completely rehearsed, but in some sense rehearsed versus speech that we are, I mean, the not the speech in that sense, but the speech, right? The kind of things that prime ministers and kind of things that happens in parliament, for example. So these are very clean, semi-rehearsed speech by native speakers. The ASR systems give pretty good results. So the WER that the claim WERs that you see are probably on those kind of test data sets that we have, right? So approaching zero point 0.9 WER. So, but when we tested the same models on Tamil speakers, for example, or Hindi speakers from so Tamil speakers is speaking Hindi, or for example, Arunachali Hindi, or uh, we also did something on Meghalaya Hindi, Bangla speakers speaking Hindi. Uh, Most of these are again the data that we had that we ran on was from YouTube. So these were influencers and instructors and teachers. They were trying to teach. So for Tamil, this was exactly so. She was trying to teach Hindi to the Tamil speakers, and this was a native Tamil speaker. So her Hindi was pretty good in the sense that the it was not that she was a learner of Hindi, right? So she was a good fluent speaker of Hindi, and similar things for Arunachali Hindi as well. And the WER that we got was ranging from 0.45 to zero point 0.6, so almost a 50% drop in performance, and the transcriptions that you got doesn't remain usable anymore. So with that much of WER, so there's not much that you could do with that. And I think we ran similar experiments with children's speech. There's a lot of issues with children's speech because when you're collecting children's data, there are a lot of ethical concerns that come into picture, right? So and that's why there's not much of that data available, but we did have something to run our test experiments on. And for children, I think the WR for adult children, so not adult children, so so for young children more than 5 years old, so from 5 to 8, 9 years old children, the WR remained at around the same zero point 0.5 ish. And I mean, so if you have Hindi speakers, speaking children, the native speakers of Hindi, if they're younger than 5 years, uh, then the system doesn't work at all. I mean, WR of uh, 0.89, so it doesn't work. It just fails, and also because it's not trained for, I think, children younger than. It's not trained for children of 5 years as well. So it's not trained. Definitely, it will not work for children who are still. There are a lot of things that we could talk about, right? So about that. Now, I think the one of the things that uh, for the adult speech that we could probably work a little bit more on is the non-native varieties of languages like Hindi. Now, there's an assumption, right? So there's an ongoing assumption that say we are giving you models for all languages, all 22 languages. Why do you need a model for uh, non-native speakers? For example, uh, if you want to talk to Tamil speaker, the Tamil speaker will talk in Tamil, and there will be this speech-to-speech pipeline which will get you the speech in Hindi, and then you speak in Hindi, they get it in Tamil. So that's the kind of pipeline that's been in focus. But I think if that's a very reductive view of how communication happens, right? So it's not always that I would want to do that. Also, the second thing, obviously, if you're talking about a space like education, now you cannot always have, if you're trying to teach a language like Hindi in Tamil Nadu, you would have Tamil speakers teaching Hindi. And if you want your systems to work there, you would need it to be trained on those kinds. So that's one, uh, I would say, one of the places where it needs a lot of work in building data sets, using data from non-native speakers, at least for the larger languages which are spoken in. So language like Bangla, for example, is that also has a very large non-native population within West Bengal, but also within states like Assam, Tripura, right? So and especially I think if you are looking at it from the perspective of education, from the perspective of language pedagogy, uh, models like those which works with non-native speakers would be uh, should be some that
Yeah.
should be some, that should come into picture.
Yes, yes, Professor Minati.
Um, can I just ask 3, 4 questions? But our speakers can address them whenever they want to. So you decide when to take up those questions. I'll just ask 3, 4 questions. That we we are actually pondering about. One is, when we talk about languages being very fluid, so basically every language is a multilingual repertoire. And at the same time, we also distinguish, between different repertoires. So how do you address this question of, multilingual repertoire, each language being one, and then there is an overlap also between languages spoken in the same region. So in other words, the linguistic fluidity, how do you address that in your AI, tool, both in translation, probably less, but when you uh, work with speech platform. So what is that you, yeah, you take the more standard variety or you take the most colloquial variety, and also the
Ma'am, we lost you for a minute. Can you repeat the question?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
At what stage you address some of the pedagogic questions that we are interested in? One is, of course, like you are, documenting these languages, making these languages accessible. Many oral languages, therefore, are now accessible through AI platform. But at what stage you address pedagogic questions? Right at the beginning or at a later stage, and therefore what limitations you work with. That's my second question. Third is, suppose we want to use these AI resources for pedagogic work in the classroom. What kind of facilities the schools require? And what kind of material conditions the schools require, and how do we address those? My fourth question is, this is a question many people are asking, is that what is the danger of continuing the project of hegemony, linguistic hegemony of major languages through AI, which actually promises of including more languages, like oral languages, getting oral languages recorded, and their resources also accessible to public through big data. And also you are developing small, language models where I think you have richer features, less bias, and you can approximate to cultural authenticity or the linguistic authenticity of the community. But at the same time, if the language hegemony continues, what I mean, there is a danger of also uh, AI submitting to this hegemony. So how do you prepare yourself against this linguistic hegemony continuing even after we document more languages which were not included earlier? I have some more questions, but you don't have to address right away. Take questions from others, and Karthik also has more questions. Take them as in when you want. Yeah, thank you.
No, so Professor Minati, yes, Professor Ajit, please.
Yeah, well, actually, I wanted to add on to what Minati was talking about the dialectal variations and the hegemony of languages. Now, AI has to deal with this issue because what has happened is not just in English, but all other languages have the internal hierarchy of dialects. There is one particular variety which is always emphasized and projected in the textbooks, in the academic discourse, in the classrooms and all that. You know, that's also equally applicable to Hindi, for example. Hindi has been somewhat, the Hindi in the standard, so-called standard sense, has been somewhat hegemonic because it has dominated over several other variations. I will not call them dialects, I would rather call them languages, several variations, including Bhojpuri and Rajasthani and all other different varieties. So what happens, unfortunately, is that this propagation of the dominant variety as their standard language is part of our educational system, part of the way textbooks are written, is part of the way the teachers transact in the classroom and also evaluate. Therefore, I think what is needed is to get rid of that kind of dialectal variations. What is often we have done, for example, in Odisha, in preparing the multilingual education classrooms, what we did is we tried to incorporate all dialectal variations as much as possible within the text. For example, if you are writing a story, then a particular word and its different dialectal variations of that particular word are incorporated into the story, so that the artificial hierarchy that has been imposed on languages by preeminence of a particular variety and the dominance of that variety over all other variety has to go. And therefore, I think AI has a role here in getting out of that kind of hierarchization of languages within language, the dialectal hierarchization, because it really leaves many out of it. You know, when English, Hindi, for example, is Hindi in the standard sense, is emphasized in the media, in the textbooks, in the newspapers, then all of the different varieties which are subsumed, unfortunately, under Hindi are neglected. That is something that I think AI, particularly application of AI in language technology and language teaching and all that, has to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ajit, Professor Ajit. Now, before we move ahead, so I actually wanted to add some more questions for both of them to address, and I also address some of them personally. Like I'll also add some points to that. Is one question that also comes about not just the pedagogical applications of it. Like, when do we start thinking about the pedagogical applications for it? So, for example, Kalika pointed out about SLM models. Ritesh pointed out about speech technologies being used in classrooms. Now, how do we talk? So when we talk of pedagogy, we talk of teachers being trained, and teachers need to learn how to use it. And we are also talking about a new artifact being introduced to the school ecosystem. Now, do we have an infrastructural requirement for that? And have we prepared our kids for it? Like, we know for a fact that smartphone impact on the child has not been always positive. Now, including screen time as such has not always been productive. Now, how do we move on with these technologies? Are our current infrastructural requirements, are we going to be dependent on a data center somewhere in Bangalore or somewhere in Hyderabad to power an AI-powered device somewhere in, let us say, Chhattisgarh? Like, can there be systems that can operate locally? Can how? So the question here is both the human factor and the infrastructure factor. So I'll be happy if you can address that as well in addressing these questions. So one is about linguistic, like flattening of the linguistic diversity. The other is about the pedagogy and when do you bring in a pedagogical design into these models? So can you address these two? At least these are broader classifications, if I'm not wrong.
Do you want me to go first? I knew I
Uh-huh.
was in trouble when I had so many JNU folks and everyone around. No, so the answer is, these are very difficult and very, very deep-rooted problems. So an AI system is not going to suddenly kind of uproot linguistic hegemony. The only thing is that the people, I think of uh, my job in some sense is to continuously remind the people who hold the power to create these, very, very, right now it's like a very disruptive technology, um, continuously remind them about the power structures that exist within, even something as simple as the languages that are spoken, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is that the linguistic hegemony that we're talking about is also so deeply entrenched in our existing systems, right? So right now, this is again a thing that I keep pushing back on. Right now, the way AI is being used is to kind of put it on top of our existing systems or along with our existing systems and make it, do things faster, better, um, in a more cost-effective manner in some cases, etc., etc. It's very few people are thinking about how we can use something that is essentially a very powerful tool to kind of reimagine this whole space. That's not happening as much as one would like to, right? And my take on this is that do we really think that we will continue solving the same problems that we've been trying to solve for 10 years and we'll continue solving them for another 10 years? Then this is really not a very powerful tool, right? Like, then what's the point? We're just replacing one, um, structure with another kind of a structure. How do I think? And I mean, I am not the big tech person, despite working in Microsoft, who controls these, um, systems. But the way I think is to have more and more participatory design and participatory development, where the communities themselves are involved. Of course, like then you can ask the question that who in the community would be involved. But if you're talking about Bhojpuri, which is a huge language community, who represents that community to be involved in the participatory design, because there are power structures within those communities as well that we have to be aware of. But I think participatory design and participatory development of such systems, of such data sets, is the best way. Now, best way to kind of address these things. Pedagogy, it's also right now at the building of the model level, just at the building of the model level, we do not think about pedagogy because a model is something horizontal that runs across various things, right? We think about pedagogy at the education vertical built on top of the model, and we did that. So in like Karthik said, there's a project Vellum that we are involved in, and through that we built a Shiksha bot. Now, against all prevalent things, we did not use the bot to address students. We used the bots to address teachers, right? So we first surveyed about 100, 200 teachers across the country, heard from them. Like this was from state boards as well as CBSE. These were in villages as well as in smaller towns, etc. So we did a very comprehensive study of teachers across the survey of teachers across the country. And understood that one of the things that is a real pain point for them is creating lesson plans, which they have to create every, week. For every single class, they have to have a lesson plan, right? And they spend a lot of time doing that. And they might not have a lot of content, or like, similar quality of content all teachers might not have. So that's like, the starting point. And then we kind of worked with a not-for-profit called Shikshana, which works with teachers, and took their input in a kind of a participatory design kind of a manner. And the Shiksha bot is for the teachers. It's for the teachers to create assignments. It's for the teachers to create content. So all the control is with the teachers. Now, the language part where we ran into a problem there was that, like, we were doing the first pilot in Kannada, right? And the systems are really bad at Kannada. And that's when we started looking at the small language models, and we trained them based on the task that was expected. From a technologist point of view, most technologists don't know what pedagogy is. So you have to partner with people who know what it is. So the Shikshana Foundation and the teachers that they work with gave us the input that went into this thing. And now Shikshana is like rolling it out to several other states for the teachers that, the institutions, the schools that they work with. So that's how we go about it. I don't know if that makes sense or answers your question, Karthik.
Uh, I believe it does. So in some way, in sense, it's all opening up new possibilities, I believe, rather than giving a definitive answer, if I'm not wrong. So, Ritesh, would you want to expand on the linguistic hegemony, because you spoke about Project Boli, stuff like that? Yeah, please.
Yeah, I think, the day writing as a technology was invented, I think linguistic hegemony has its roots there, and that's not something that we could probably solve using, as Kalika said, or or to say that at least we are not aiming to do that as of now. And uh, also we need to understand that AI as a field in general is not dominated by linguists and people who understand what linguistic hegemony is, right? So in general, you see that in everything from data set collection to building the models, those hegemonies are maintained. They are considered the way to be. They're considered the legitimate way to do it, right? So there are instructions for writing in amateur doing, especially for I think that's true for translation, ASR, both any writing data sets. So you have to write in a standard canonical way. That's how the data sets are supposed to be. Okay, so writing, that's one part. I mean, I think that's also something which we all understand, that there has to be a standard. We all probably agree that there has to be writing standard. Also, it makes things easier to teach. When you're teaching, you cannot have hundreds of different writing standards. It makes things more uniform but easier. But when it comes to speech, I think what I was hinting at was also that we try and build the models out of uh, largely out of what we consider standard. And there have been some recent efforts at also representing different varieties of speech of a single language. And so I'll probably talk about two projects. So one is the one that we are part of, Bhashini, and we're doing Speed TV project. So for Bhashini, I think there have been a good instruction that in terms of uh, capturing language varieties of all kinds, right? So as much as you could. So and it should be, the data set is expected to be balanced from different perspectives, right? So balanced in terms of the kind of speakers that you're roping in. So they, of course, gender balance, but also some balance in terms of age, educational qualifications, where they belong to, and uh, sure. So yeah, socioeconomic situation, condition as well, the literacy levels. So practically, of course, it may not be always possible to achieve everything, but there's an there's a policy decision that's been there to include different varieties. So that I think is as far as we could go, and we hope that the models that have been trained at least uh, will work equally well, almost equally well for different uh, uh, groups of users. There is also this idea of, so for example, the project that we are working on, Speed TV, we have four languages, which Toto, Chokri, Kogbodok, and Nishi. So these are the four languages which are not scheduled, and the number of speakers. So, for example, language like Toto is not there in it's still the only truly endangered, critically endangered language that India has. So and very few speakers. So starting from that to a language like Nishi, which is, or even Kogbodok, so which has several varieties of their own, right? So they're spoken over a large area. Almost Nishi is almost half of Arunachal, and different varieties there. Kokborok is also a large language in Tripura, neighboring states as well. So, in terms of the kind of languages that are represented and that we are trying to build technologies for, and also in terms of the different varieties that could be included, not just including one standard variety. Uh, for these languages. So those are the kind of things that we are trying to do. So I would just want to contrast this with one other project that probably all of us are aware of. I don't want to name it because I'm going to criticize it a lot. So, but this is a project where people are collecting language data, and they are collecting language data not by the name of language, but uh, but via locations, via districts, right? So the argument is that there are numerous languages in India and you cannot name the languages, and you go to different districts, collect data from districts, call it language of that district. And I mean, in theory, if put it right, if somebody puts it right, it might sound good. But what's happening, what happens in practical situations is that it has become a tool of excluding a lot of most of these smaller languages that are spoken in those districts, in those regions. And I think so let me also put it, that's funded by a very large organization, and that project has huge funding. I'm sorry to say that, but whole of the basis of doing that project is all wrong. So that reinforces, and that reinforces, sorry, that's my 3-year-old. Okay, so that is probably something where all these hegemonic stances are taken as it is, and is being reinforced through that. So that's, I mean, just to show that it's not same all across the board, right? So there are different kinds of people, and there are uh, probably very powerful, well-funded uh, organizations and initiatives that are going to reinforce those hegemonies. The question is how
Can
they resist that. Yeah.
Yeah, can I add something? Also the funders themselves are severely in need of education, because one of the big funding organizations, which I will not name again, um, you know, the person who was like discussing how they could fund data collection in um, Indian languages actually asked me, can you just tell us which are um, the five most poor Indian languages in the
What
country?
what do
And
they mean
I
by that?
just
Poor in
like
terms of
What?
economically poor.
economically.
And I just looked at him and like, I was just flabbergasted by the question, because, what do you mean by a poor language? So I said, there are poor people in every language community, right? Like there are not so poor people in the language community. What do you really mean by a language, the poorest language in this country? And so these kind of things exist, these kind of mindsets, these kind of ignorance exists. And sometimes it does lead to
What is that even a question? I mean, so yeah, I'm like,
no, let's
Yeah,
help,
I'm
let's
also
by doing this help the poorest people.
no, but
Okay.
that's hegemony that is making them poor, not the language, right? It's a linguistic hegemony that in turn makes them poor, not the language.
Yeah. So I was, but that's what I'm saying. Like, it's just at first I just didn't understand what exactly was he
yeah,
poor. Because coming from my background, I thought poor in resources. Which are the languages which have the least number of digital resources for model building. But I realized he meant like poverty. How so just to add to what Ritesh was saying, there is a lot of ignorance that kind of floats around and then gets funded and propagates, and all kinds of things happen because of that.
So now, while both Kalika and Ritesh flagged and addressed some of questions that raised by Professor Ajit and Professor Minati, I also want to add one point about a sort of an interesting experiment, sort of an early stage of collaboration that we are building with a community to drive model building through a completely participatory approach. So this is a model that this is a sort of a collaboration that is still in its early stage, but both me and Ritesh just came fresh out of it. Now, we are trying to work with the local organization and the local community in the Nilgiris. Both can be named Keystone Foundation and the Irula community. Irula community speaks the Irula mother tongue, supposedly a mother tongue classified under Tamil, but a language by its own sense. DP Patnaik is there, so I have no worries in saying that it's a language by its own sense. Now, this language has been now listed only under Tamil, but this language is spoken by at least 7 to 8,000 speakers. And we are trying to build, or either we are trying to exploring on methods to build speech models and internal language models for these languages from the ground up. Where we linguists and data scientists play a secondary role, we let the communities take the primary role. So we are trying to see how that early stage of collaboration could be pushed ahead and moved into a much larger participatory approach, rather participatory community-driven AI model, how they can be built. So those sort of attempts are also happening here and there. There are several methods like that. So in addition to this, that I'll also point out two different set of language data that have started to emerge. So communities have started to run community archives, either in the form of language archives like language archive CMSs like Mukrutu, or in the form of websites like WordPress and Wix. So those are also here. The language community themselves are very much aware of it, and then I personally know some of those communities who are involved in this work. And similarly, we also see the state and the central government also moving towards establishing language archives, or the understanding that there is a threat to the language has set in now. So people are moving towards those. So as new materials become available, I believe new modes of working will also emerge. So with more community awareness, I believe there will be if not us, at least the community will knock us out and say, start including us. Probably that could answer some of the linguistic hegemony question, because that is somewhere where we have also community involvement is something that we are also lagging behind. So with this, there are certain questions in the chat box.
Chat also, yeah.
Yeah, so I would want to address those. There's three more.
Just one.
Yes, ma'am.
Just
Yeah.
one tiny clarification. When you involve communities, anyway for data collection, they are part of the whole thing. But how far do you train them in the AI system so that they can also use it? They also know what is in that, in AI platform.
So as I pointed out, this early stage of collaboration that we are building with the community over here. So for linguists, also AI systems is new. What is an AI system? What is a transformer system? What is an encoder? What is a decoder? What do you mean by NLU? What do you mean by generative AI? Everything is new for even us. So we learned it together with the community. So here there was a sort of a workshop held together with the community in the community setup, where both the community and the linguists were probably spoken to in the same language, but with some interpretation and mediation by a Tamil speaker. So now this sort of a work is happening, and as I pointed out, so what do we mean when we mean collaborative or participatory approach? Is that they have an equal say on it. That means they understand what they're getting into. They understand the technicalities of it. If not all, at least one or two members to begin with understands the technicalities of it from the rudimentary, at least from the rudimentary sense, because linguists also don't understand well enough. You don't ask me what is the formula for a transformer. I won't know.
I know.
Okay, but
Yeah, before you conclude, can you tell us what are some of the worst fears you have when you imagine a bigger collaboration with education, you know? And also 2 recommendations where you think these are the 2, 3 things that should be done to leverage, this platform, this collaboration.
So before I let Kalika
Before you conclude, so take questions from others. I would just like
So
to hear some of
that
these from all
this
three of you.
recommendations, I think both Kalika, Ritesh, and also me, we can take it up towards the end of it. But there are some
Yeah, do
questions that I
Yeah.
think should be addressed.
Yeah. So
Okay.
just at
So
the end, you address.
yes, we will conclude it in a recommendation, and you could also puncture more of us. Like we wanted that too, like the puncture of arguments essentially.
Some fears.
So
You are the
so
insider.
so one is to Kalika, addressed directly by Ankita. You have sparked interesting questions on sharing your knowledge and cultural aspects. So one thing that I'm just summarizing this question. So Ankita, if I'm wrong, please open your mic and you can rephrase those questions. So the question that she has put is that both language and culture is a very dynamic concept, dynamic artifact in the real world. They continuously evolve. So if a model is built on one version of a culture and language, and if the language and culture has moved on, will the model be able to move on? That's the question primarily, I believe, because that's, if you look at it from the perspective of language or from the perspective of a culture, aren't we stereotyping it in some sense? Isn't that your question, Ankita?
Yeah.
Ah,
Is that
yes,
your
please,
question?
Kalika.
So let me answer that. So that's stereotyping is one thing that we need to be very aware of, and that was my point when I was talking about the goddesses with several arms. So that is definitely a thing. But I think language and culture evolves at a lesser speed than these models evolve. So they're continuously being trained and they're continuously being fed data. I think the pace is less for language and cultures. Languages and culture are less dynamic. Right now, the pace at which these models are going is really, really crazy.
Yeah, almost every model in the next in 2 days.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't think we are in danger of that right now, that the models will become obsolete.
Okay, thank you, Kalika. So the other question is from Satvika. Satvika asks, I'm a linguist in training myself, but we work on continuum of casual to very careful speech. What kind of losses are we incurring from gathering data from and only training our models on careful speech? So Satvika, so as a linguist, both like all the three of us can answer, but I would like to answer this before I lend it to others. Now we have started to work with, while the early forms of language models might have been, especially speech models, might have been from read out speeches. That is not true anymore. So we are also working on much diverse data sets. So our own organization works with very diverse set of data. We work from both the most casual, the most spontaneous ouch to all the way to the most planned and executed ritual setting of the language. So all those are also slowly and steadily, the corpus is getting more diverse as we speak. So that is happening. I think both Ritesh and Kalika would agree with me on that. Yes. So next question, in your view, how can emerging technologies, this is by Suraj Kumar, how can emerging technologies be positioned as a tool to empower tribal students and educators in Madhya Pradesh rather than widening the digital cultural divide. Uh, I think the divide needs to be addressed politically first. Not we don't have a magic pill, so I'll spill the bean now. We don't have the magic pill. So if a society works on a hierarchical hegemonic sense, then any tool that the society produces will have those hierarchy and hegemony imprint on them. So I think this panel joins you in asking that question, if I'm not wrong, Suraj. Okay. So some more new questions. Vijay Kumar, linguistic hegemony exists in education system itself despite linguists being part of the education policy making and curriculum development. Ritesh, Kalika, even Professor Minati, are linguists part of the curriculum development? Or even, like, sorry, I know that came out with the hint of sarcasm. Sorry.
We are not free of these hegemonies. So just because we are educationists or linguists, yeah, we are acutely sensitive. But then linguistic hegemony characterizes every educational space. I'll not say JNU. JNU is also,
Hmm.
yeah, at some level, JNU also has this hegemony. Yeah, we are struggling, both at the individual level, both at individual level and at the level of state policy.
And both as a discipline.
Yeah,
Actually.
I'll not say that we are still free of these hegemonic tendencies. But yes, that's the struggle, and that makes us more creative. That's why we are sitting here. But you are right, even if linguists and educationists are involved in policy making, uh, we still haven't, we are not successful in addressing the question of hegemony fully. Technology itself will bring in another kind of hegemony. I remember when I had started my career in Chhattisgarh, this radio was used for teaching English. And I observed 3 classes in Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh. So teachers were, puppets. So they played the radio, and one, rhyme was played, and children and teachers, sang with the radio and did very minimal things. And that accent was British accent, not even American or any other, clearly British accent. Teacher was also not able to pronounce in that accent, so everybody was actually powerless in that class. So I don't know who that new artifact was empowering and what new affordances that new artifact was bringing in. So yeah, we are aware of it. We have to constantly ask questions and struggle against it. But at the same time, know that I appreciate the kind of work all 3 of them are doing, because a lot of these actively invisibilized communities um, uh, now have another kind of power, theoretically at least, because their language is getting recorded. It is accessible to everybody. It's an open platform. And so if there is a political will, then it can be used, to our advantage in the classroom, and it can enhance the inclusive project. So I think that's the hope with which we are working. And that's where I respect AI. But at the same time, as I was saying, that there are also many fears, and we are sort of aware of, and we should be warning each other all the time. Yeah.
I think I should also add that it's not just English or Anglicization of language which is responsible for hierarchization of standard and non-standard varieties in India. It's also Sanskritization. The fact that Sanskritized versions of vocabulary or structure of language in different languages, Indian languages, is valued higher than the non-Sanskritized versions, the so-called sadhu and the common folk expressions, or the high and the low variety. But it goes back to a kind of preemptive assumption that Sanskritized varieties are much more prestigious than the Sanskritized varieties. I think that also has to go, in application of technologies to language education and so on. Yeah. Thank you.
So, yeah, thank you, Dr. Ajit. So, Professor Minati, if we may, there are two more questions that can we take it? So one is Anita Rampal, I believe this is Professor Anita Rampal. She's asking us, how then do we work together to address this sort of one linguistic hegemony that exists in education among even linguists, I would add. So how do we work together? So probably having conversations. To begin with, we need to acknowledge ignorance, both the part of data collecting funders who give money for data collection, ignorance and biases in forms of policymakers, educationists, linguists. I believe that's the first way to start acknowledging it, raising the questions. But I don't know, how do we then work together to address this? Like, I leave to more seasoned researchers on this.
So one thing that I can add, and I know this is like not a perfect thing, but the thing is that, if you're looking at commercial companies, commercial organizations to address these deep-rooted issues through technology, that's not going to happen because, if you think about it, commercial entities are only accountable to their shareholders. They're only accountable to their bottom line. So what are the institutions and structures and organizations that are accountable to the citizens or to the people, right? And of course, one is, I think government. I think government is like the biggest, we can argue about whether a government works, it doesn't work, like, what they're doing is good or bad or ugly, all that remains. But as a structure, right now it's only the government that is accountable to the citizens of the country. And, to kind of create a sort of a fora where, like, you can kind of impress upon the policymakers the need for this to happen. And I have, again, like, I don't have any easy answers to this, but that's one way that we could work together to create awareness and to create a sort of a pressure group that these important things, you can't let, half the country slip through the cracks. So, that's not possible for the government to do. Or it is possible for a government to do, but that's not what a government is supposed to do. So pressure groups, etc., and awareness. Because I can tell you, most of the people who work are not even aware. They don't even think along these issues. They don't think like this at all. It's not that they're like, maliciously acting to do things in a certain way. But awareness is also a very big thing. You make technologists work with social scientists for long enough time, and everybody changes for the better.
Collaboration at the root. So Yashika has another question. So we have one more question that I skipped is Vijay's question. So what do we do? How do we expect technology to tackle problems? I think we have addressed that adequately. Now, to Yashika's question, we have been working on designing AI models to capture oral reading fluency. The major contention that as a multilingual researcher I have with it is that what is the pronunciation and enunciation that can be considered as correct? Those state want us to develop these models on BRP for English and Hindi without a colloquial impact, which definitely gives wrong results. for reading fluency. As children are not taught in the purest form, how can we bring those nuances for AI? So translanguaging, that's a reality. I speak in English, which is probably not the same as what Professor Minati speaks or what Ritesh spoke or what everyone else in the room speaks. So all of us speak a different dialect of English, and I think I am understandable. I believe I am understandable. So I think there's a problem. Sorry, I'm answering this question on behalf of the panel. I think there's this is not a problem of the AI. It's a problem of the design, and the design comes from a certain political ideology. I think that is the problem, not the child or the AI system here, if I'm not wrong. The AI system does understand the child if the child speaks in a different variety of English. So the next question is from again Satvika. So Sam Altman have already claimed the Gen AI cannot be created, maybe evolved without large-scale data theft. What are the ethical and accountability measures we employ to ensure that going ahead we don't steal from the communities and instead empower them? Ritesh, Kalika.
I think you should answer that question.
Okay, so
Huh?
without saying you want to answer that question, thank you, Ritesh. That's
I don't want
No,
to people asking Karthik to answer that question. He speaks.
okay. So let me just give you one perspective on this. The thing is that without going to Sam Altman or like any specific person, there are a whole bunch of ethical issues that we really need to resolve. None of them are easy. And none of them, and in some cases we are almost like pushing against a lot of very powerful entities, right? The thing is for the communities to organize, like to put the power somehow back in the hands of communities. There are open source things that the communities can take. I very strongly suggest, though I don't agree with everything he says, but if you haven't read Stephen Bird, please go read Stephen Bird about how even, researchers, not just technologies, but technologists, but even researchers drop in, helicopter in to the communities, do something and helicopter out, right? So in the case of technologists, it's only a little worse than just pure researchers, because we went to work with this community called Idumishami, right, in Arunachal Pradesh, and the minute we came, my intern reached there, and you might know her, Pamir Gogoi. So she went there, and the first thing they said, "Oh, you're a researcher." So they were so used to all these researchers coming to study them, to say something and then going away. There was no, nothing back to the community there. And technologists do the same thing. So like I would suggest that you read something about Stephen Bird, though he is at an extreme that I don't always agree with everything that he says, because you have to start.
So no, on the data, like since yes, 1 minute, Rahul, before I come to you, on the theft of data and stuff like that, I believe so. Educate, agitate, and organize. Educate the community is where we start. I'm sorry, that is the only slogan that works here. I believe that should be also, like Kalika pointed out, parrot. So we have paratrooping linguists all around the world, moving and collecting butterflies and going back and doing whatever we do. So that sort of a framework needs to change. So that's for linguists, that's for educationists, that's for sociologists, that's for all researchers. It's not just for us. So we have for a long time being the helicopter or the paratrooping person. We have never been involved at the ground level with the communities and trying to build those systems. While I don't believe that AI is giving us the unique opportunity, because AI, as any other modes of building society, has always been based on some sort of a theft or some sort of an extraction from some of the marginalized communities. So AI is not is not something new there. Now, the only solution that we believe in our organization that could be worked out is start by educating the people. Build awareness. Once the awareness builds, people will understand they have been misled, they have been wrong, they have been misrepresented. Once that happens, they organize themselves. Now, that's what I believe is the only notion here. I know this is a very deeply political statement, but I stand by it for any modes of research or ethical engagement with the community. Now, that is why we need to go about. So now, unless we do that, unless we keep people, as long as we keep people ignorant, we are feeding a system that is going to extract out of them. So that's the way out, is what I believe. So over to you, Rahul. I think there could be some more questions. Yes, there are some more questions, but I think we should also wrap it up.
I
So
have
over to you,
one
Rahul.
question
Oh,
actually.
please, yeah, go
As
ahead.
a like we both are language, like we are both have done documentation, and but Maniti ma'am told me one day that she said, and it was like really changing everything in my mind. Like the education cannot wait for the documentation, which is like really hard hitting for me, and it's true. But
True.
how do you think we can like use AI tool for not only just documenting the language, but also training language specific AI models simultaneously that can support in creation of educational resources? Like, can we do it all together?
Before I answer so I'll take a lead on answering this from our own experience, which is experience between me and Ritesh. So we are sort of enabling this sort of a collaborative documentation and language building process in one pipeline. So where we can move language documentation data into some sort of a language model building pipeline, and we have been working on it, and then we'll also have a paper that will be upcoming on it. Sort of one system that could feed both preservation agenda and also the agenda of building models, which could be more tuned for specific purposes. That could also be done, but that's again in early stages. So but that said, I agree with Professor Minati. Document educationists can't wait for documentation people. So I think you guys should also learn to collaborate. Professor Minati is a good example. Their project in Orissa is a very good example of documenting and doing education together. So I think she can answer that
And
herself.
I mean, I had a context, when I said
Uh,
this, that classroom is very live unless it is completely determined by textbooks or the knowledge of the teacher. If these two are seen as, artifacts and resource, and children's languages, their cultural knowledge is allowed, then classroom itself is a laboratory, what translanguaging or multilingualism projects use. And so the documentation work should continue because that is empowering the minoritized or minority languages, So that has to continue. But obviously education can't wait for it. And also shouldn't entirely depend on it. The
hmm.
class is your resource. And so, I was actually addressing this this documentation um, kind of hegemony. Like first you document it, then you do, and also like work with what is already documented. That hegemony I was addressing. So education can't wait, but documentation is extremely important, and it should be also encouraged both in AI
No,
platform and whatever other platforms. Uh, See, the textbooks to some extent have preserved languages and lives of people, you know. And so if we talk about plurality, even in imagining textbooks and other teaching learning materials, we are preserving, children's languages and knowledge to a large extent. So that, when I was telling Rahul this, I had this on mind. I said, yes, both are important, but this cannot wait. Yeah.
no, but the children can't wait. The children can't
Yes.
wait for a paratrooper to drop in, document a language, produce a grammar after 10 years. I'm sorry, I'm being too hypercritical of my own subdiscipline. But that is the reality. The
Both
children
are
can't wait.
important, yeah. But children
Yes.
can't wait. Also,
Children.
children, when they
Mm.
bring these resources, and if education knows how to document them, then you have another kind of resource, available to you. So, yeah, I was coming from that point. Yeah.
It
No,
was
but
an
that's a very
eye-opening thing for me.
no, but that's a wonderful perspective. I agree with you, Rahul. Like then we need to spread our skills across. Both we can interchange.
Yeah,
We would
yeah.
also love to write pedagogical grammar, so we should also learn from each other.
I
Uh,
always interact with linguists for this reason. I'm not a linguist, I'm a psychologist, worked on, psycholinguistics rather. But, I have failed all these years to get one post sanction for linguistics in my center. Every time I proposed, my proposal was rejected. They said, we have so few posts, we can't devote. I said, you need one. This is an education center. I didn't succeed in 30 years. So this, the challenge we are facing, even when we talk about interdisciplinary approach to education. Yeah. Okay. Karthik, please.
We should we continue? There's one or two more questions. That's all.
Yeah, take one or two
We shouldn't-
questions and then just wind up.
Yeah.
Karthik,
Okay.
I have one question.
Sorry, I couldn't see you. Yeah, please go ahead. I could only hear your voice. Sorry.
Yeah, Karthik. I have
Yes,
one
Karthik,
question.
please.
How to decide if the language is in danger if it is not enumerated in the census? Like I'm working on the Sarvaria Bhojpuri. It's like Ritesh said, like if you are classifying language based on the region, like it is called Basti district of UP Uttar Pradesh. Earlier it was called like Sarvaria Bhojpuri. But 1961, after that, there is no mention in the census of India. So how I'm going to assess that language like vitality? Is it like in danger based on that number?
So Prithvi, this is outside the domain of this panel, but my answer is this.
No, this is question after documentation.
Yeah. So but still my answer is, if a language or a mother tongue is not listed in the census, but we know it is spoken as a linguist, then take it for granted that it is endangered, just by the mere fact that we are erasing its existence. If it is there, people acknowledge it, we acknowledge it as linguists, and census itself has acknowledged in the past, but we are not listing it anymore. That is a state hegemony operating there, trying to erase linguistic diversity. So that's a clear sign of endangerment or a threat to a language. So Sunita Mishra, I think that answers your question, Prithvi. But you can contact me anytime. We'll be happy to continue this conversation offline as well. I'm a linguist and an educationist. I would like to discuss what kind of framework of language structures or nature of language these AI tools are based on. If it is generative framework, then idiomosity of language are bound to suffer, leading to weird translations. So, Kalika, Ritesh, to computational linguist.
I think I will let Ritesh take that. He's been quiet too long.
Yeah.
No. Okay, I don't think this based on. I mean, it's called generative AI. It's not based on generative framework as you understand it, and okay. So I think the short answer would be that it's not based on any of the frameworks that. That was built for understanding human languages. So it's I'm looking for a one-word answer. So it's essentially a mathematical model, right? And if I have to simplify it even further, then it's a collection of lot of linear equations that are transformed by some non-linearity. So I think you shouldn't look for theorization there. So there is no linguistic theorization being used in building the models that you see.
None whatsoever. None of the large language models have anything to do with language except that take it as input and produce output in a language. So they have nothing to do with linguistics. It's mostly, if you think about it, like, Ritesh said, to even simplify it further, it is like prediction, right? Like, what word goes with another word, which is a mathematical probability that is kind of computed at a very, very basic level.
So I believe that sufficiently answers that question. So now moving ahead, the last question for the day. As I am thinking about these data sets and collaboration of the community, will there not be a threat of teaching and reproducing these AI tools the inequalities of society? Again, who will be collecting these data and from where? NEP 2020 has casually indicated towards a multilingual and inclusive learning environment. But if we are to develop these models, we need to accept certain dialects that are yet to be given their due acknowledgement. So yes, there are inherent problems. So if I can answer on behalf of the panel, yes, there are inherent problems. The data sets that we collect, as Ritesh pointed out, as Kalika pointed out, are does have a very strong imprint of the inequalities of our societies. The methods that we are handling to collect data, the choice of sampling, the choice of people whom we interact with, all have its biases inbuilt to it. Now, that is something that is much more deeper than AI. I think that's a much larger question to be addressed when it comes to resolving inequalities in the society. But yes, even though it is casually indicated, this is the first time, probably, if I'm not wrong, that mother tongue home language has actually found a mention in India's education policy, which I think Professor Minati can, yeah, sure. Yes, so
I mean,
that I think,
very explicitly, at least. It was
yes,
there in every other, policy, but it's too open, too straight, and too explicit in this one. Yeah.
in that sense, it has opened up new possibilities. That's what I believe.
Yeah.
So the possibilities have emerged for us to engage more and look for opportunities to bring these languages out in the front. I think that's the context of this talk. So, Professor Minati, over to you.
Yeah, just one thing. I mean, it just came to my mind that Kalika was talking about, Microsoft work done by Microsoft Office. Um, See, you are working on translation platform. And Karthik, obviously, it's a smaller organization and two very young enthusiasts starting it. They work on speech platform. So do you see a hegemony also in who is working on translation platform, who is working on speech platform?
So can I just like,
I don't know.
Ritesh knows
I mean,
this.
just
Yeah,
it came to
Ritesh
my mind.
already knows this. So, let me explain what I do. I'm a researcher. So Microsoft has a research wing. It's called Microsoft
Yeah.
Research Lab, which more or less functions like a university department. Um, if we do something very path breaking, as a piece of technology, it might go into a Microsoft product. Getting into a Microsoft product is like a very big thing.
Big.
What we mostly do is like we do research, we collaborate with external partners, including people like Ritesh and Karthik. What we work on, 90 to 95% of what we do, we put it out in the open source for anyone to kind of, work on. So we're part of the research ecosystem. We work a little bit like, not fully like, like in an academic setting like JNU, but we work very much like an academic setting within Microsoft. So,
And I was just asking,
all
is it that the big
so
companies
so
go
so
for
the
translation platform? That's what I
So
was
the
asking.
other thing, the other thing is that right now, all the Googles and the Microsofts of the world have had translation platforms for a very long time. They've existed, but the kind of work that Karthik is doing, especially and Ritesh are doing for the low resource languages, and if it can feed into something like Bharshini, that would
Yeah.
be much more effective than any system, because Microsoft, see, it's what I said. Who are you accountable for? What is in it for Microsoft to kind of uh, do a Gondi Hindi translation?
Yeah.
Right? They're not going to make any money out of it. In fact, no translation system from any of these companies actually makes money. It's a way to get people into other things that make money.
Thank you,
Gateway.
Kanika.
Also, I think
Uh,
MSR has worked on speech a lot, and Kalika, to start with, I would say that she worked on speech, and then now she has. It's only now that she has shifted to probably, yeah. So
Yeah,
Thanks
I
for
don't
telling,
even
guys.
work on
Big companies
translation
versus.
anymore, by the way. I only work on responsible AI and multilingual generative AI. I don't even work on translation systems anymore. I work on evaluation.
Thank you. Okay, before we end this session, can I hear some
Yes.
fears that you have? And because that's from that only can come from insiders.
My
Sure.
biggest fear is that we might actually lose diversity if we are not careful.
Might
and we
lose
don't.
diversity. Okay. Yeah, that's
Because I see this already happening in small bits and pieces. So anecdotally, I was at my son's graduation, school graduation, where all the kids had to give like a 2 or 3 minute speech. Every single child, except 3 of them who hadn't read the email that they were supposed to give a speech, used ChatGPT. It followed the same format, first say a funny story, then say, what are you going to do? So it was just so
structured.
boring. Not only structured, it was like almost identical. You knew now they are going to thank the teachers. Now they're going to say, oh, I don't thank my parents often enough. So thank you for my parents. They're going to say this. It was almost near identical. And I was just thinking that, in the past, we got to see kids who were very creative doing very creative things, and then we got to see kids who were scared and shy, and their creativity came out in a different way. And uh, so those are the kind of things that I'm scared of, like, we lose diversity in terms of number of languages also, because everybody will aspire towards things that become economically viable.
Ritesh, Karthik?
Ritesh first. Ritesh, go ahead.
So my fear would probably not, I mean, it's not the technology itself, but how we are going to, put it into use and for what. For example, I could hear things and I could see that there have been plans to possibly replace teachers with AI bots or things like that. I think those are uh, the the worst, the doomsday kind of scenario that I would be most afraid of. And so I mean, look, so somebody was telling me that if apparently coders, the programmers, are uh, required to do more difficult work than what teachers are required to do. So they're doing more complex things, apparently. So, and if AI could replace programmers, then it's very easy to replace teachers. That's what the thought process behind it. And these are not of some random people, but people who could probably have a say in the policy making. So what policy makers would ultimately use the AI systems for and how it will be used. Um, I think that could lead to the disastrous situations where the classrooms are no longer run by teachers. That's probably uh, I mean that's one thing that despite building everything, we are trying to say every day and everywhere that it's not for replacing, it's for assisting you. It's an assistant. I mean, I think the names in that sense, when you say that these are AI assistants, that name itself is a good name to have. So there's something that's meant to assist you, not to replace.
Thank you.
So,
Karthik?
coming back to my fears, I think I share both of their fears as well. So, one thing that also bothers me is also who is accountable for what they produces? Who is going to be held accountable? In some of these things, both like Ritesh pointed out, that it has to be a human in the loop system. But still, the human is now burdened with a lot of material to validate. The amount of validation is going to increase because companies, governments are trying to use these AI tools and actually not to give better service, but rather to cut cost. Now, where is the accountability? Is the human wrong? Is the AI wrong? Or are we going to be afraid to accept the AI is wrong? Like when there is a life or death situation. While most of the cases it may not be, but in some rare context, it could. So we know algorithms have led to negative impact on female child's development, especially Instagram, Meta making a public acceptance of it in the Senate hearing in US. So Instagram having a very negative influence on young women, especially on about the body and about the language. So a lot of these things they have openly accepted it, and we have accepted it they have accepted it in such a tone that they have known it for a long time, but still they have not done anything. So where is the accountability? Now, when we are going to bring it to domains like India is fastly adopting AI in multiple aspects. So there is no second opinion on that. We are adopting AI every day in every new domain, be it hospital management, be it patient interaction, patient doctor interaction, or be it teacher-student interactions. Already several tech companies are doing this. So where is the accountability? Who is accountable for what is being produced? So that is my biggest fear. And I also equally share what both Kanika and Ritesh pointed out. The diversity could eventually get flattened. So multilingualism, which is our inherent plus sort of a positive, could now be turned against me. You know already Tamil, so why do you want another system in Irula? You already know Tamil, why do you want another system in Toda? So Saurashtra or anything, I can just keep on adding it. Now that is something, unless we are politically aware, unless we are consciously doing, I think we are always in the threat of wiping out rather than promoting diversity. So I think these are the two threats that keep me thinking.
Thank you, Karthik. Okay, before I conclude, Anita, I completely agree with you. You have written that no, that's not true. It was always in our policy, including the RT draft. Part of the false narratives and propaganda about NEP, we must realize. At a broader level, I completely agree with you. A constitution itself had talked about teaching in mother tongue till class 5. And I read constitution and read all the articles together. There can't be a more empowering document. Yes, this 66-page, policy is now talked about way more. There is a section devoted to multilingualism, language and the power of multilingualism. Something I don't remember now. And everybody's talking about it. I agree with you. It's not that it wasn't there. It was always there. Yeah. I thank. Okay.
No, I should retract my statement. That on that.
No,
While it is,
I responded to your, when you said Minati, yeah, I was a little hesitant because this is the position I always took, not that we always talked about. And, the fear that you talked about, when I keep multilingualism in the front, I might work against it. I don't know which direction we are going. Maybe another 10 years will tell us if we really did what we wanted to do. So anyway, that's another debate. We will engage with it some other day. Karthik, thank you. Karthik actually helped us put up this panel. And so I thank Karthik. I thank equally Ritesh and Kalika to be on board. And this is also one gray area for us. So we'll be taking your help to draft this section. And there'll be another one. I'll send you the invite. British Council wants to organize one roundtable for us because they are working on the question of pedagogy right away. And for you, preservation and all that are equally and maybe more important at one level. But British Council takes up pedagogic questions right away. So they wanted to do it. So I'll send an invite so that we can have a good interaction with you and British Council even on that day. And thank you once again, and I'll be taking your help for this section of the report. Thank you. And I
Thank you
thank
so
the
much.
audience also. We had a huge participation. And thank you for posing questions to us, good questions to us. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you
ma'am.
so
Thank you,
much.
everyone.
Thank you, Lavanya.
Right.
And I also thank Varsa, who is helping us in
Thank you,
planning
Varsha. Thank you, Varsha,
the
so much.
flyers, and she's actually giving more time than expected.
And my sincere apology in
Yeah.
front of everyone. I
No,
made
no,
a
that's
trouble
fine. That's fine.
with because
Uh,
of the miscommunication. Yeah.
So bye,
but
Kalika. Bye, Karthik.
Bye.
Till
Bye.
Bye.
I hope this recording will be made available in the
Yes.
YouTube sometime.
We are within 2-3 days. It will be uploaded.
Thank
Fine?
you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you, Kalika. Thank you,
Thank
Rahul.
you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
ma'am.
Karthik. Thank you, ma'am.
Bye.
Where do I leave, man? How do I leave? The door. Ritesh, the door.